Happy Monday. Hope everybody but had a nice weekend and Mother's Day. Um, I've been I had planned on getting this out a little bit sooner. I was excited and anxious to kind of do another video and pass on information and um, so the last video, if you remember correctly or not, I will remind you and welcome to the new people coming on, but I had found a discrepancy of a couple people's age, and especially the ones that showed one person was 117 years when he died, and one was 118 years. Well, let me tell you, I laughed and laughed for at least a day, and then I talked to my brother about it, who also does genealogy with me. And, and I told him, I said, it's not your mistake, I know for sure, because whatever I did, messed it up. And anyway, then on Mother's Day, I was talking to my son about it, and he kind of pointed out to me that had I looked at the possibility that maybe it was some other thing that caused this to happen. And I know in my videos I've mentioned how many heirs genealogists run into, um, and it can be I don't know. I mean, I think I've made a list now, and there's not many. And when you think about headstone being incorrect or uh, birth certificate or you name it, you're going to find some discrepancies, and sometimes that leads you down paths that you really don't want to go. Well, anyway, so I did the time, and I got my papers out, and I checked my part of it as far as all the sources were there. And when I did my mathematical calculation, the people were not 117 or 118. And it just ended up, by me doing it also, there was um, a certain number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 people who had discrepancies. And so what I did is I actually, I couldn't find a note in ancestry.com to be able to make too many notes on it, but I did send a copy of this information to their heir report so they could take a look at it, because the people were definitely, the oldest one was 81, and he was the one that was 114, and another one was 117, he was 77. So it's one of those areas that I think we all have to be like aware of the fact that that's I don't know how many sources you might have to have that say, when there's a discrepancy, and before you give up on it. I know that I have mentioned before in a video when Lois and Virginia had a discrepancy, and they took it to their grave. They were still having, and it was, their discrepancy was leading me down the path to try to figure out, which one of them and why one was going one way and the other. Now, I felt like that was my brick wall for a long time ago. And in genealogy terms, a brick wall is like, you really are stuck. And so I spent a number of years feeling like really stuck, for various reasons, because there were still those that the husband and the wife who I cannot find, and I have find the kids and have found them. And so I actually, by working really, really much harder on some of the data that I had gathered in my travels or just online, I had found the kids that were missing, that definitely were the kids that belonged to our line of the DNA match, and I'm certain beyond a shadow of a doubt that the discrepancy that went between Virginia and Lois was correct about, um, and had visited the areas. And some of it was a little bit of a difficult situation because there was some records where unusual things happened and you had to really dig deep. And so I had trouble for a long time trying to figure out why there was a mother and a daughter, but a long way from, the daughter had been married to somebody else. And when her husband died, then they went back to this area. And it was not an easy, and I don't want you to think that genealogy is always like that. In fact, I think that, when I was looking at this problem, after the last video, I felt like, well, maybe it's time for me to work on a different family. And I think that sometimes that's what we do. We kind of go as far as we can, and then, but I really wanted to kind of follow through as far as I could, on the videos with the conversation that I've been giving out the information to you on. So I feel very certain now about there what it was. There was one man called they were both Pryors, and one was Samuel Pryor, and one was he had one of his middle names was Pickney, which was kind of interesting. So his name was Coatsworth Pickney Pryor, and he went by Charles Coates Coatsworth Pickney Pryor. And one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you today about was, how I use maps and how I enjoy the maps. And I think the maps are what finally, they just lived down the road. And when I was up there, I went from one place to the other, and I didn't have enough of the Pickney's information to really lock it in totally when I was there. But as the pieces started to fit together, without a doubt, this is not one of our DNA people. And I had heard the story, I think it was from Lois one time, or maybe it was even from Virginia. Um, there is I don't hear about it as much, like today. Of course, I've been isolated now for like 3 years, but so I'm not going to the meetings, or I hadn't even started doing Zoom meetings with the groups that I belong to in genealogy. But I know that it was a big, very honor thing is if you could prove your lineage through to the Daughters of the Revolution. And so this was the thing that was driving part of what Virginia was trying to do. And this Pickney guy goes up through Massachusetts and then in that direction. So she just took off with it like that. Now, our prior, was in Ohio first, and we're farmers, and I haven't seen anything remarkable about um, that would give them the prestige that you would need to be able to get into the Daughters of the Revolutionary, which might show up later, but the children that absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I have been working on, and they lost their mother, and that's recorded. And I said when I was at Muscadine, it was like her death was close to um, Muscadine, near Muscadine is what it had said, but I cannot find. That's still a mystery. I can find the kids, and so I did a little more research on that, and they're there, and there's just so much um, around that's not known about what happened to that couple. But I'm not. I don't really feel like that's a brick wall necessarily. I think that I will keep. I'm hoping this will help, like have more conversations with people who are working on priors, and I wanted to. I'm going to review a little bit later some of the ways you can contact me, or we can put our heads together and try to figure out um, the discrepancy there as far as what could have happened. And I think part of it may be just setting for a laborious amount of time, maybe, and going through newspapers in the areas that would be possibly, have checked um, in the Muscadine newspapers. And I think I checked up really close to where their kids were after they didn't return from wherever they went. Um, but I think that, the more and more newspapers that are going electronic is going to be helpful also. So I think that's one thing that, um, so I'm not feeling really stuck with that. And I felt good about getting rid of all the 117-year-old people, which was, but there still is that. And I kind of wanted to give you the names, in case you have questions about it, or if you have answers about it, or if you know anything about it. But so the mother's name was Isabel Jane. Her maiden name was Wilson, and then she married Pryor. And they had 4 kids: Mary Adeline, Frank E., Jesse William, and Samuel Wilson. And Wilson was his middle name. because because Isabel Jane was her maiden name. And then Jesse Williams is our DNA trail that I've been following. And then I could follow Frank, and I found Frank and Jesse and Samuel in the different parts of Canada. And I've actually had correspondence from them. So I know for sure they're not the Pryors that went out to the East Coast. They actually went up into Canada. And I have really good sources of information. I mean, they don't they all they heard about was hand-me-down stories that these kids were in an orphanage, and I didn't find an orphanage at all. They were actually Samuel was the youngest. He would have been a baby, and he went into a ward of the court type scenario and was placed in a family. And then I was reading just someplace today that Frank also was in a family, and then Jesse was old enough to be working for his grandfather Wilson, so he showed up on the census there. And then Mary um, kind of went, she was just passed from house to house, doing housekeeping or whatever work they needed done. And then she actually married and left that area. And I have, all the backup is from that is that's how Lois comes into it. And so that part is pretty exciting for me. That is actually to that point. So one of the things that I had also wanted to cover a little bit is, it's like a map, an old-fashioned map. And I know one day I had a, 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 a friend, a, a young friend of mine that was in the back seat, and we were driving to Breckenridge, the ski resort up above Denver, and she wanted to know how many maps did I have in the car. And I told her exactly where I keep them all. And I think she got them out. She counted 156. So I think I'm probably a map collector in a way. I love them. I love the paper ones. I like the plastic ones. I like the online ones. I like there's just so much. But when I was traveling, what I was finding a lot of times, especially, and you'll see it if you start to look through my records at all, or what will come up is that you'll find that towns disappear, and so sometimes they'll be on a map, but you get to that zone and there is nobody there, or there's something new there. And so I think I was able to get the brick wall situation between the Pickney and the other Pryor that was in our DNA line. Um, it helped me really finalize the distance when I could see on the map. And it was just a straight road, and I could see where people would get confused about you're here and then you're there, and that's a different Pryor than the ones that are, just down the road, a straight road. It's not even like you don't have to go take a boat. Now, the boat Pryors were really closer to the Mississippi, but the our connection to most of them. But when I looked at it from the standpoint of a map, I saw the potential also that, maybe that's how they got around. I mean, the Mississippi wasn't that far. Maybe they could take, the when I did this transportation kind of, to see what was going on that time of year, I was kind of surprised they said walking or horses or boats, like something like that. But they didn't mention buggies, but I don't know if buggies would have been, really um, too expensive for some people to travel, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, I know that people walked, like the people that were in the um, crossing and going out west in the covered wagons. I mean, they walked next to the wagons, and some people rode horses. So, and it's interesting to me too, because when I was out, especially in this area, it was definitely farmland, and a lot of it had been in the generations of people, Um, but I remember coming up on this view of this field, and it was all horses, and they weren't like naggy horses. They were beautiful, beautiful horses. And I stopped, and at first I was just going to try to take some pictures, but there were so many of them that I just kind of stood there and just enjoyed um, I wished I would have had a video at that point, and then I could send to Margie in Norway, who was always, on the kids' side of the family, their aunt was a horsewoman in rodeos and everything in New Mexico, and she moved to Norway, and there wasn't the same beautiful horses. But then right down the road, and this was like a road out in the middle of nowhere. This wasn't anything like, well, it might have been on my map, but it would have been a very small road. And so after I passed hundreds and hundreds of horses out just out in the field, I came across like I first I didn't know what it was because it was trucks. Most of them were the oversized big trucks that they used for farming, and they were lining both sides of the road. And there wasn't any director or anything like that, but people were meandering back and forth and across the road and going. And they were actually having. I finally saw the sign, and it was an auction for farm equipment, and some of it was like antique equipment that people were collecting. And you don't see that a lot of the places that I live anyway, especially right now in Denver. You don't see people necessarily. um Everybody has their thing, their hobby, or like a golf course or something like that. But these guys were really, really very happy and they were having a great old time and going and looking at all these tractors. And so it was interesting to me. And so I still think that's part of my enjoyable part of doing genealogy is going and seeing the land and seeing what kind of trees there were and what kind of flowers they had, and how much um especially what's growing. And I know when we were traveling with our sons, I had to stop and go and look because, I know what I've seen growing and I know what I haven't. And when we went to the South, there was cotton growing. So I had to get out and go get a little ball of cotton and examine it. I mean, I've come from a logging town, and of course I was interested in logs and went on the tour of how they make plywood and paper, and it was quite a deal. But I was just that kind of child, I think, growing up, that I always wanted to know, um, you know, what was growing in the different fields. The other thing is on the maps. I think that um, it's just fun to draw the lines and everything. And I know when we were traveling extensively, we would, go around and around and around in different places. And so I still have, I don't know that I have 156 or whatever she counted the last time, but I probably still have them somewhere. I think that, I enjoy going on Wikipedia and really reading the history as far as when the counties move, or when they were a township even. Especially when I was up in Iowa, it was really noticeable. There would be townships, and then the townships eventually become big enough to actually be a town, and then the next thing you know, they're a ghost town. And so there was this constant, or going back and forth. And I think that now some of the communities, they're still farmers, but um, they're more outreaching and travel and see other parts of the world and everything. And I met a lot of farmers that are very, very, they own many, many, many acres and are very reputable, but they have the money to go, and they go overseas and travel to Europe and all kinds of stuff in the off season. But I think that there's also the farmers that, you know, were marginal. As far as I know, when I used to talk about to Lois, I mean, I think a lot of their farming was probably a more, we didn't talk much about what her dad was growing. Most of it was everything he was doing to be able to fulfill and put food on the table for that many. I think there were 17 kids, and so he had to plant a lot of just that type of have the chickens, and just have the full. And there's a lot of people going back to that right now. They want to live off the land, and my brother and his wife have put a great deal of time and energy into the raised beds, and now they got the chickens. And um, just in case they live way out in the country, and you just don't know everything. It's nice to know you have food, and it tastes so much better than what they produce in the store. And when I was growing up, a lot of it was we didn't have the money, and so would can things, and we would go get clams and can them for the winter. And everybody in the family hunted for deer and elk. And I think one time there was a bear, and yeah, there was a lot of things that I was exposed to when I was growing up, but we always were able to, make it through. Um, so the other thing that I did kind of want to mention too is I've been thinking more about the responses that I have been receiving on the video, and I thank you all, and I love hearing from you. And I'm not totally exactly locked into exactly what direction this videos are going to go. I think that, if someone shows interest in a certain area, or if they're involved in something I'm already working on, and I don't know. One of the things I've realized though is a lot of people that have viewed my videos, when I've when they've contacted me, we've had conversations. A lot of people have called me even, and I explained to them about how YouTube works. And so when you watch a video, there's a little tab underneath the picture, and it will say subscribe. And what that means is you're subscribing to viewing my videos. Now, you can subscribe to as many videos people that are out there, and there are a lot of people out there doing different things on videos, and how to's. And but when you hit the button, that doesn't mean you're going to pay anything. There's no money. That's a way really for um, YouTube in the background to be able to calculate out, if they see there's this many people watching my videos, then they will go to advertisement people and get what they might think people that would be interested in. So, and I don't have to pay for any of this, as far as I just have to push my button and be brave enough to make a video. And so far, I've had a lot of fun with it. And I think that, my type of video at this age and stage in my life is like, it's perfectly fine to be human. And I think that um, there's a lot of people out there that probably have some really good information, and I want to pass this on and have it available for my grandkids, especially, or other people, in other parts of the family, even, to be able to have something to fall back on. They also give you like the thumbs up and the thumbs down. Excuse me. And that registers also with um, I mean, like if I was showing like 100 videos and everybody was putting thumbs down, I would know maybe this wasn't going the direction I thought it was going to go. But it's also kind of in the background of what YouTube is looking at. The other thing is that I still would like to request anybody that watches my video, to leave me a comment. I built a comment in not very long ago, but nobody's sent me a comment yet, so I don't know if it's working for sure. I'd like to know, that it is working and up and um, working the way. So you can definitely make a comment to me about the you know with questions, or ideas or interests, or I would happy to hear from you. um I also, when I release my videos more recently, I'm sharing them with my friends on Facebook. And that's another place that some of the people who actually have responded to me or called me. It's been through Facebook, but Facebook is always, um, they'll pull up the video and say, "Oh, look here, Marcia McDonald just did another video on genealogy stories," and when you hit subscribe, that also will tell you, oh, there's another one out there. So it all kind of works together. It's not as complex as some of the things I've found in with Facebook, not with Facebook, with well, yeah, part of it is with the Meta, where Facebook's actually bought Instagram, and it's very, very detailed, very complex. And so I was happy when I started making these videos, because it's not. You just have a few buttons you need to push, and away you go. And so far, I think I started one and it was 6 minutes before I said anything. But I learned how to edit it, and so that was kind of cool. But I still think I'm just trying to convey the information more than, I'm not going to be entered in for a Academy Award or anything like that. So I wanted to give you, some of that information. Seemed like there was one more place. Oh, yeah, if you happen to be on Ancestry.com, and you can find me that way. If you're already um, even possibly DNA matched to me, there's a place you can click and you can send me a note that way. And I do correspond with people at times through that. So let me think. I think that might be it for today. I'm really glad I got to do this. And, I was noticing, I wanted to make sure you saw Mount St. Helens blowing up, but the light's shooting on today, it looks like there's lavas coming down it right now. So I grew up very, very close to Mount St. Helens as a child, and it was pretty traumatic to me when it blew because I wasn't expecting it, but it was like I had so many memories that I felt like just went right up into the ether because we used to go, and then the other picture was the original picture from, before it blew. And we kind of studied it in school, and they said, oh, yeah, about every 100 years. Well, somewhere along the line, it gets dropped, and so we were not expecting it. People like me, anyway, we weren't expecting it. Um, now I've learned more about it, and it still kind of shoots ash every once in a while. And so it's. And then the other thing you could look at is there's a little thing back there that my has my name on it, McDonald. It's my maiden name, um, and the next picture, I haven't found it yet, but one of the people that had responded to me doing the videos mentioned, "Are you that little girl in the bagpipe uniform?" And I had published I made copies, and I had this little thing I put together with the help of my sister, and I think it was in like 1984 maybe or something like that, and we put together what little bit of information that we had available just by between the two of us. And so evidently somebody made more pictures of it and it was passed around, so I quite often get people asking that. So I thought if I can find one of those. So my maiden name, so that surname McDonald was always interesting because I didn't give it any thought about it really, but um everything I was, playing the bagpipes and in the school and marching with the band, and we were the Scottish Highlanders and Kelso, Washington, and we had a Scotty dog as a mascot, and and they had, later on too, they started having the festivals come to town, and I've went to some. I'm trying to think. I went to some here in Colorado, I think, and whenever I get a chance, I go. And I always want. I like when they throw the tabers, and it just must be part of the DNA in me, whatever. But I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to try any of those ways, and then I'll know better. Also, when I do my next video, which won't be long. I love doing it, and this is probably the most work I did before actually doing my videos, is because I was, kind of confounded about what you know, how that mistake happened that somebody was 118 years old. We have a lot of long livers, I call them, and but I have not heard anything that long. So anyway, I hope you have a good evening, and I'll be checking in with you later. Bye.